paranormal. Para-X. The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Bright the cheeks and warm the heart, but tread the circle thrice about to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Hey, merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. My guest tonight is Scott Cunningham Ashworth, and her true love is the written word. And her writing continues the legacy left by her father, novelist Scott Cunningham, and her brother Scott Cunningham, an icon of metaphysical publishing. She believes that magic is everywhere and available to everyone, and from tending the garden and land spirits to utilizing breath as a tool for mindfulness, Christine lives her craft. Now she has many published books, 10 novels, numerous short stories, and a nonfiction essay collection, Where Are the Pearls, and Other Bits of Wisdom. And since 2018, she's written a regular column in the Cartomancer magazine. And her new book, which we're going to talk about today, is called Scott Cunningham, The Path Taken, Honoring the Life and Legacy of a Wiccan Trailblazer. Now, for those of you in the chat room, questions and comments are always welcome. And if you're listening live and you're not in the chat room, why don't you come and join us at paraxradionetwork.com. All right, Christine, welcome.
Thank you so much, Marla. It's great to be here.
Well, you have a great book, and you should be here. That's just where you should be. And I just want to say, I don't know if people can hear, but Christine and I both have air conditioners on because otherwise we're going to melt, so it's not so bad, but I'm just, we're not like on the freeway and Mack trucks are driving by or anything like that. Just to let you know. All right. So there have been a few books written about your brother over time, but yours is a book that needed to be written when the time was right. And I guess the time has come, if I'm not mistaken. It should be available for people to be able to actually get their hands on the book sometime in early September, right?
Yes, it drops September 4th, I believe. The Kindle version drops September 4th. Paperbacks should start shipping out on the 5th, September 5th.
And I think people can pre-order on Amazon right now anyway, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I love that feature. But then, you get it, and you say, okay, I've got it pre-bought. Oh, when is it coming? When is it coming? When is it coming? You just get crazy because you want it right then and there. But it's a book worth waiting for because your brother, was a pivotal figure in the history of Wicca and witchcraft, and like I said before, a prolific author. And in lots of cases, when a writer passes away, there's a big rush to go out and buy that person's books. But when it comes to this happening, that's not the case with Scott's books. There's still bestsellers all over the place. How do you figure that?
He fills a need in the market. And I mean, that's a very cold way of putting it.
Yeah.
But his books, they fill a need. There's that they touch that beginner that needs guidance and doesn't know where to go and hasn't had a good experience maybe prior to, and his work is very kind and very I don't want to say gentle, but it's very kind, and I think that's.
I think sometimes. No, finish the sentence. Go ahead.
I think that's why his books continue to sell, because I don't think a single one of them is out of print. They're not all bestsellers by any means.
Right. Yeah.
But not a single one of them is out of print, and he's been gone for 30 years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing in a good way. And I wonder if he would have thought that would happen, but, well, maybe he's looking down and knows that for sure. It's like, what's all the big deal, right? That kind of thing.
I think if he had lived, some of his books might have gone out of print because he would have kept writing more,
Mm-hmm.
But the ones we have are all we're going to get, so.
Oh, but there's so many different books that, and it's not all about just one thing. This is the thing. I mean, there's so many books that he's written on a whole bunch of things, and we can get down to that in a little bit later. But, I just got a comment from the chat room. She said, what drew her to Scott's books from the beginning was they seemed to be written for the solitary and thoughtful person.
Oh, well put.
Yeah. So, do you know, I mean, we're spilling the beans on him in a little bit in his personal life, but did you know that he was interested in the metaphysical as, you guys were growing up and he was getting older and,
Oh, absolutely.
You did?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was kind of hard to miss. I mean, the scrying and the scent of incense coming from his room. I mean, those were, and the movies he liked to watch and the books he got. It all made sense. I mean, it didn't bother me, and it certainly didn't bother our parents.
But did it interest you?
Well, when it was just the two of us, I was in December of 73, my brother, our oldest brother, Greg, got married and moved out. So it was just Scott and I. So from there on out, he would, I'd be passing by and he'd draw me into, oh, hey, do you want to learn this? Or can I test this out on you? And it was either, candle wax medallion making or using a pendulum or, scrying with ink and oil in water. And so it didn't dawn on me until after I did a couple of interviews recently that he was learning and I was learning alongside him. So in that way, yes, it interested me very much. But I also was 14 and I had a ballet career ahead of me. That's where I thought my life was going. And time got away from us.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you were learning with him, but where was he learning all of these things? Because, back then there wasn't a whole lot to dig up or an easy way to dig up.
I don't know. I do know that he made friends with somebody in high school or maybe junior high that also had witchy tendencies. And then I think she may have led him to a local coven, but I don't know. I don't have those details.
Yeah.
So
all right. So you were going to be a ballerina, and you were. But when did you find your witchy path?
Well, wow. I was contacted by Christopher Penczak in 2009 to write a little something for his book on ancestors of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, would you do this for me? And I said, sure. And then I started looking into what he was doing, and Temple of Witchcraft was just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking into that, and I decided to take his and this isn't what it's called, but it's Witchcraft 101 course. It's the, And I bought the workbook, and I bought the, he sent me the CDs to go with, because since I was so far away.
Yeah.
And, but this was 2009. I had 2 little kids under the age of 10. And, no, they were a little over. They were teenagers. That was worse. That was soccer time. So I worked full time, and I didn't have a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though I had paid for the course, I told him, I really can't do this right now. And he said, I totally understand. And I said, I don't want my money back because I don't want you to think I'm that kind of person. And he said, well, anytime you want to take it, come on back and let me know. And that was when I realized that, yes, this is something I want to do, but I don't have time right now. And and studying magic and the occult and tarot, and it takes time.
Yeah.
And you have to not only have the time, but want to prioritize the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I will say I was a little tiny bit scared. Just a little tiny bit scared. Because I didn't know, I hadn't gone through all of Scott's books at that point. And the ones I had read, I read in the 90s, in the late 90s. So that was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really until I started seeing my friends playing with their tarot decks and going, oh, I think I have some tarot decks. And I looked around, I had 4. Oh. And I couldn't remember how I got them. I know Scott gave me one for my 13th birthday. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how I got the others. And then a very dear friend of mine mailed me a deck, and that's the one I really started using to get into tarot. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2015 or 2016, I think. And then in 2018, my dear friend Arwen Lynch Poe invited me up to the Northwest Tarot Symposium. And so I went up to that, and everything kind of steamrolled from there.
Yeah, it fell into place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people think, we have to start learning the craft at an early age and this and that. And, you do it when you're ready. I mean, I wasted my younger years doing other things too, I mean, I always knew that, witchcraft was in the family, but, I was just like, okay, I'm a witch. Okay, thanks. And went on with business, But then when I started to get serious about it, and this is like a lot of people have said in the book, their experiences, but, mine was really simple because I wanted to learn. And I just kind of got, I don't want to join a coven, and I don't know who to turn to. And, the first thing that I got on my hands on was Wicca, Scott's book guide for the Solitary Practitioner. But it was a long time coming because there was, this was so far ago that I was really serious, but I wanted to be a solitary, and everybody was saying that I had to join a coven. And I just couldn't find much information on it, and I floundered for the longest time. And I was really trying to, wave the white flag and say I give up because nothing sounds right to me.
Yeah.
And I really don't know how I found Scott's book, but it was the only one that resonated with me. And before, I gave up completely, I found it. So it was like a godsend or a goddess send, because from the very first page, I felt like a home,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are the same way. And it's not, throughout the book, there's several people who contributed memories and accolades of what Scott meant to them or how he affected their lives. Like, people that have been on my show, like Amy Blackthorne. She wrote about what Scott did for herbalists everywhere. Nicholas Pearson wrote something called A Gem Among Stones, the legacy of Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Crystals, Gems, and Metal Magic. And Dorothy Morris had, oh my God, she said she opened her thing by saying, I never met Scott Cunningham, but he was my mentor.
Yes.
And I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
But when did you start reading his books?
Not until after he died.
Okay.
It is a truth that you are just another person in your own family, no matter how famous you may be.
Yeah, of course.
So those conversations that I wish I could have had with him, I didn't get to have.
Yeah.
And I still go back, and I still haven't read through all of them, because some of them, like the encyclopedias, are, to me, more, okay, I need to know about this specific thing. So you go to the book for that specific thing. You don't sit and read it through. Now, I know people do, but that's not my, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I've never read through an encyclopedia in my entire life, though I know I have friends who do and have, and I'm talking, the Funk and Wagnalls encyclopedias, the old
and the Judika Illis encyclopedias with their 5,000 spell books and things like that. Yeah.
And that one is fascinating, Judika's. You could just dive into it and get lost with all these rare ingredients and all these, it's just so much fun to read.
Yeah,
that's the exception.
Those are the kind of fun encyclopedias that you pick up, because you're not going to read them cover to cover, because she's got the one about sages and all kinds of ones. But it's just something that if you just want to read something for a minute or an hour or something, you can grab it and, just open the book to anything and you're going to find stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but, everybody has their preferences and things that we say, oh, I've got to read about that, and other things, well, maybe not. But, down the line, we keep learning, and that's the main thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you said in your book that, and I found that interesting, that after you read, books for the first time, you said it felt like you were seeing Scott's heart and soul for the very first time, and that he was, writing in a voice that you never heard, but you felt like him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was a very private person, and things like talking about his relationship with the gods and the goddesses, those are very, very, very personal things that he can talk about in a book. Mm-hmm. Because, well, back then there was no social media, so no one was going to, no one was going to, I don't know, get in his face about it. Mm-hmm. But his writing voice was a lot kinder and more education directed than he was in real life. In real life, he was just my goofy older brother who irritated me and that I had a great time with, depending on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us that write do have a second voice, in different ways. Some people get very pedantic when they're writing, trying to teach. Other people just are easy reads, it all depends.
Yeah.
But, there's just so many ways that he touched people, because there was just so many different things. It's not like a one-trick pony. Okay, let's talk about solitary witches, I mean, he even talked about kitchen witchery, or kitchen Wicca, and that, I don't know if a lot of people know about that book, because they're thinking all the other stuff that he was writing that was more metaphysical or witchy.
Yeah, the Kitchen Witch book, Magic in Food or Magic in the Kitchen, I don't remember which one it is,
yeah,
is a little more folk magic, and I think that was not something that our grandmother taught him, but something that had the feel of our grandmother, Hazel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it was in part to honor her, though I don't think he says that in the book anywhere. It's just a gut feeling I have, and it's fun. And I flipped through it the other day and I saw, oh, I know that recipe. Oh, I know that recipe.
You could taste it, couldn't you?
Well, there were ones that Mom had made, and that he had perfected and really enjoyed. So why not share those?
So, how were your parents when they kind of got into the fact that he was into what he was into, as far as, the witchcraft and whatever? Because, people of their generation, unless, that ran through the bloodlines and stuff, were always kind of leery about that sort of thing.
I think one of the books that my mother got was about witchcrafters. It was a fiction book. It was about witchcraft or something. And he borrowed it from her. I think that's one of the things that at a very young age he picked up and started reading and got his brain going. But also, my parents were both college graduates, which was not normal in the 70s to have both parents be college graduates. Apparently it's still not normal. But they never pushed us. They never said, you must do this, you must do that. They let us find our own way. And all three of us were expected to go to college. I think, Scott did go to college, but he didn't finish. Greg finally finished, got a degree, or maybe 2 degrees, in his 30s or 40s. So, that to me tells me that as a parent, you need to let your child find their own way and not put them in a straitjacket of your own imagining. So while they never expressed disappointment or anger or fear about what he was doing, because he was also, all the way up until I think he was 19, he was singing in the church choir with our mom. And we belonged to the United Methodist Church, as the Cunninghams and my family did. And so it just got to the point where he was writing too much and he was going to school that he dropped singing eventually. But I'm not going to say they were fine with it. They never showed any negativity toward it. And when he started writing and selling books, well, more power to him. They weren't gonna tell him he was crazy.
Here's a successful writer, that's few and far between. Yeah. No, it sounded, from reading the book, I mean, you've got so many memories of growing up and holidays and going on vacations and all that. And, you were very lucky, to have parents that had an open mind enough not to sway you, like you said, and not to judge something that they didn't really know about.
Yeah.
That's kind of the problem with a lot of people that, oh, no, it's devil worship. You can't read this book, stuff like that. And it's kind of wants me to bang my head against the wall when people are that way. They just don't know, but they make certain assumptions about what things are.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it's their loss, but they don't realize it, so that doesn't help either.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, it just, to speak to the point, whenever there's something that you don't understand, it would be nice if people chose to research and learn rather than just go directly to fear and loathing.
Yeah. But some people are always going to wear blinders, and others will see the light at some point.
Yeah.
There's another couple comments in the chat room, and she said that she always thought Scott lived what he wrote, and she wonders if he had the kitchen of a witch.
Yes. Did he have? He had a Dutch oven, which was his cauldron, and he had a little cauldron that he used for other stuff, but for kitchen cooking and stuff, he used a Dutch oven because that's what we grew up with. And I believe his was cast iron. I could be wrong about that. Mine is not cast iron because it's too heavy. I'm not strong enough to lift it when it's full. So, but yeah, he had the herbs and the, every now and then he'd have something drying hanging from the ceiling, and it always smelled good in there. I mean, mind you, once I moved out, and I wasn't there much to begin with, but once I moved out, I only went back a couple times. So it's not like I have an extensive set of memories regarding his kitchen, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think your cousin is in the chat room.
Sue?
Cece? She came in as Cece Cunningham cousin.
Okay, yeah.
All right, and said...
We found each other a while back, yeah.
Oh, okay. She said, well, in becoming interested in Wicca, I was surprised to find Scott's books, thinking that since we had the same last name, that I must read what he had to say. Years later, imagine my surprise to learn that he was actually a cousin. I'm very proud to be related.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, I mean, everything's full of surprises here and there, and for the good. I mean, it's really, I don't know, people just gravitate to, and she says, yes, it's Sue. There was a 30-second delay. But yeah, I mean, we live and we learn, and the universe, I believe, brings us together when we're supposed to meet certain people. And, it may take forever to do it, but that would be the right time to do it, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think we talked about this for a second. We're going to go to a break in a couple of seconds. But, I asked you the other day about your path. And, you're not 100% Wiccan, and I think, I'm eclectic. I take the best from both things. And you hear the opening of my show is the Wiccan Read. So did you decide to first think about Wicca, or just kind of did some research and did what best for you, that you thought was best for you?
Well, I've been looking for a coven for a while. But the problem with that is you're joining a whole bunch of people you don't know.
Yeah.
And so there's that issue. But I did find an online coven with Ethne Dawn, her Awakened Soul coven. So I was there for a little over 2 years, I think. I watched for a year, and then I participated for a year, and then I got initiated into the coven in my third year. And I love Ethne. I love the coven. But then this year happened, and I knew this was going to be a very busy year. So I pulled out of the coven for this year, and I will probably go back. But I would, and hers is very open-minded. She takes everybody. They learn everything. It's a lot to absorb. She's eclectic. She's not Wiccan per se, but a lot of what she teaches is Wiccan based because it's the easiest way to teach it, I think, in some ways. Especially when you are scattered across the world, as we were in that coven. Yeah. And there's new people that come in every year, so it's wonderful if you've never been involved in a coven before, especially if you've never really delved into witchcraft or Wicca at all. Great first step.
Yeah, it is. And, and stubborn people like me, I have a lot of witchy friends. and we get together and cackle and do all the things that people guess that we do. But we don't, we joke that because nobody except me knows all of them. Most of them don't know each other, kind of thing, And so, it's the invisible coven or whatever. But it's a coven in a sense because we all talk about things. We get messages back and forth about something that you think the other one would like to hear about, So it technically is a coven because we are learning from each other. We're just not named, or we don't have a high priestess or priest, and we just, get along really fine. So that kind of works. Okay,
well, along that path then, I have a coven through the Cartomancer. It was 2020, and Amber Hyland, the editor, asked me to write about what would it be like to have a retreat and refresh group online instead of in real time, because we were right in the middle of COVID. And so I started this group called Retreat and Refresh Sanctuary on Facebook. There are not many of us, and of the, I think there might be 20 people involved, and of the 20, maybe 6 or 7 show up any given meeting day. But it's like you said, there's no high priestess. We share a lot. We share card readings and divination stuff, and if someone's having a difficult time with something, we all talk about it, and it's a way to have that girlfriend experience without having to travel to Seattle or to San Diego or to Kansas City. It's really nice, and especially it's nice for some of the people that don't have a coven. And like I've got a girlfriend in Florida who's learning more and more and just getting into tarot, and I thought, oh my gosh, I should have invited her to the group a long time ago, and I forgot. So it's the same thing that you've got. It's a coven, but not by name. Yeah. As long as we have people that we can talk to and on the same level and learn from them, that's a great coven. We've got to take a quick break, so everybody sit still, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes.
There's more Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks right after these important messages.
I was in the hospital with my son for 18 months.
When he got injured, I wasn't prepared, but I knew I had to be strong.
When I was told about John's injury, I was in complete shock. I just remember rushing into his room and giving him a big hug and letting him know I was there.
These veterans and families are just a few of the heroes we serve at Homes for Our Troops. For thousands of severely injured veterans, everyday life is filled with barriers.
It was really the little things throughout the house. Counters that you can't roll up to.
I had to drag my wheelchair down steps.
I want to help, but he is so determined.
At Homes for Our Troops, we build specially adapted custom homes with features like wheelchair access, roll-in showers, and automatic door openers that allow them to function independently and focus on their recovery and family.
This house is freedom.
It's hope. It's a new beginning.
This house has given me my family back.
To learn more, visit hfotusa.org.
Throughout time, events have occurred that have shaped human history. Spirit voices from the past have many stories to tell, and for the past several years, channelers Barry and Connie Strom have been conducting live channeling sessions and relaying those stories and messages from those on the other side. We invite you to tune in to Barry and Connie's new show, Channeling History, on the PowerX Radio Network, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, as they relay the messages of those voices from the past, the ones who have witnessed history firsthand, and those who have made history themselves.
Hey everyone. everyone, it's Marla. If you liked tonight's episode of Stirring the Cauldron and the archive podcast as well, take a look at the show's YouTube channel and check out the dozens of shows that are there just waiting to be heard. New shows are added each week, and while you're there, why not subscribe? It's free. And if you click on that tiny little bell icon at the top of the page, you'll be notified when new shows are available. Just go to youtube.com and then type in Stirring the Cauldron Pair X and the link will appear. Just like magic.
Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
And my guest tonight is Christine Cunningham Ashworth, and we're talking about her latest book, Scott Cunningham, The Path Taken, Honoring the Life and Legacy of a Wiccan Trailblazer. Now, he was interested in so many different metaphysical modalities, some of which was like divination of all sorts, and he could use almost anything as a divination tool, like scrying, pendulum, and this made me laugh. He could even divine cheese bubbles on a pizza. Tell me about that. Christine, are you there?
I am. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was a story I got from the biography of him, Whispers of the Moon. He was with friends, and they were out having pizza somewhere, and they were teasing him about all the different ways he liked to divine, answers or, answer questions, and one of them challenged him. He said, "I bet you can't read the cheese bubbles on this pizza," and he did, and to their great surprise, was accurate. So
cheese never lies. You know that, right?
Never.
Well, he covered, so many subjects, and in his many books, from the encyclopedias and everything, I wonder, what he had in mind. This is just a rhetorical question, more different things to get even more diverse than he already did. He must have had so much swimming in his mind. I don't think I would have a mind like that. I would just get lost.
He was kind of amazing. He got so mad the last couple of years of his life that he was running out of time. And he couldn't get everything written that he wanted to write. He couldn't learn everything that he wanted to learn. And a part of me just wonders, what paths he would be on right now. Who would he be studying with? Would he be learning African traditions? Would he be learning hoodoo traditions? I don't know, but I do know he would not have stopped where he was. He would have continued to learn and continue to write and continue to share.
And so, again, he had so much to learn, he had so much to share, and in the midst of studying those topics and writing all those books, his personal life, happened also, and I'm guessing, it was an uphill battle in some instances because, like you said in the book, back in the 70s, being witchy and gay wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't. He was in two closets. He was in the broom closet
yes.
and the gay closet.
Yeah.
And he had to be careful. He died in 93. Somewhere 81 or 82, he decided to become celibate and did not have any partners after that. So I do not know what happened to make him choose that route, but if it was going to make his life safer, then I completely understand it.
Yeah, but he pedaled through so much. Just opening the doors and being that visible now. But then, he was getting sick, but he was still writing. I mean, he had hepatitis when he was 17. He had lymphoma at 27, and then the diagnosis of AIDS. But he kept on writing. That's amazing. I mean, do you think at the time that he knew how popular that, he was writing? Yeah.
No, I think more it was that he knew he needed to get the information out to help people that didn't have access any other way than books.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think it was a popularity thing for him. I don't think it was a monetary thing for him.
No.
It was an urgency. And this writing until you drop, my dad did the same thing. He wrote 50,000 words a month.
Wow.
For months, years after. My mother passed away in 2007, and he passed away in 2017, and probably for the last 5 or 6 years of his life, he wrote 50,000 words a month. Because you get to a point where that's all you can do.
And it's something that you can do well and enjoy doing, too.
Exactly. They were good at it, and so they did what they could, because otherwise, what would Scott have done? Just to be sick? No, that's not Scott. He would not have done that.
No.
He had to be writing.
And and I think, like you said in the book also, and I think a little while ago, he just knew that he wanted to get the word out. I mean, there's so much time to do so many things, and I hope he knew that he was, one of the most trusted and respected go-to people for information at that time as well.
I'm sure he knows that now. I'm not sure he knew that then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of amazing that he's doing it from the heart. He's not, like you said, not being monetary, not being egotistical, just wanting to help people that needed that help. Yeah. And he didn't know who they were, but he knew that, somebody's going to pick it up and somebody is going to read this book and it's going to make a difference in their life. And,
exactly.
One person, helping one person is good enough to some people. And I wish, he's still mentoring everybody that opens his book and reads. And it's not, it's an easy read. And as you said, he didn't talk down to anybody. He wrote from the heart, and it's a real easy read, because a lot of people worry about that. Sometimes books get very textbook-like,
Yes.
And this wasn't at all. So, I want to talk to you about ancestor altars for a minute, because, I learned something from your books too, your book. That, because I've had people on my show, I've talked about doing my own ancestor altar, but it was always, in a bookcase somewhere in the house where the cat's not going to knock it down or anything. And, you actually in the book talked about the fact that your ancestor altar is your garden. Talk about that. And I mean, are bits and pieces of your ancestors there, or little tokens, or explain?
Not exactly. My dad's family were farmers. My dad was born in Shelby, Nebraska, and he was a third-generation farmer there. Well, he would have been if he had grown up there. My grandpa ended up having to sell his farm in, let me see, what year was that? 36, I believe, because of the Dust Bowl. They had a choice. They could either take another loan out from the bank, which they couldn't pay the first 3 loans they had taken out, and hope that the weather got better the following year, or they could sell everything they owned and move to Oregon. Mm-hmm. And so what they did was they ended up selling everything they owned. They had a big sale, and sold the tractors and the land and the house and the animals that they had. And the sale of my grandpa's horses just about killed him. I mean, he loved those beasts, and having to sell them was really hard on him. And then they didn't leave right away. It took about a year for them to gather up enough resources and to build a trailer that they could put all their household belongings in. And then they took off across country and went to Oregon, where one other relative had moved into the Portland area. My grandparents ended up settling in Forest Grove, but even there, they were very farm-oriented. The kids, my dad was the youngest, and he was 9 when they moved. And the kids in the summertime, because they got there just around summertime, just starting, and everything was blooming, and there was, you could pick fruit from the trees, and it just went on. And my dad used to say that Grandpa was amazed. You would drop a seed, forget you dropped it, and then it would grow without tending it at all. It would grow. And so the kids picked strawberries when it was strawberry time, and they picked apples during apple time. And my grandpa worked on farms for a long time when they first got there. My grandmother cleaned houses, and they actually rented a house. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember how they got the house, but it was through a family connection, and they were able to rent this house that had a nice grassy lawn and, was not too far from a river. And I mean, it was like paradise compared to Shelby, Nebraska. But that sense of growing things, my dad carried with him when he moved to San Diego, and it was his first opportunity to really have a garden. And I grew up with a nectarine tree and an apple tree and boysenberry bushes, and we would make we would harvest and make stewed nectarines, and which are just so good. I haven't had a nectarine I've liked since our tree died so long ago. But they got into the canning and the freezing, and it was lovely. There was when all his kids were gone, my dad started growing these giant pumpkins, and he'd have a stand of corn in one corner and tomato plants that grew up to 6 feet high. And I mean, it was he just had that green thumb. And so that's where Scott and I got our love for growing things. And we, so whenever I go out in the garden, I'll look at the star jasmine, which my dad had in abundance in his backyard, and say, hi, Daddy. Or I'll look at the roses and say, hi, Mom. And, all the herbs I've planted. It's like, hey, Scott, how you doing? It's just like, it's just a part of my family legacy. So it's very easy to talk to my family when I'm in the garden.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a wonderful way to honor them too. I mean, in that respect, because you go and comforting. It's like having a meatloaf or a comforting meal. To just get comfort food, and that's comfort food for the soul when you're out in the garden.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's so much more that we want to talk about. Did I go over something that maybe you want to bring up that I haven't?
Well, there was this one thing, there's something about, how do I put this? Okay, so you were talking about how I got into, if I always knew I was attracted to witchcraft and so on in this path. And in 1999, I started working for a a .com, they were all the rage back in '99, and everyone quote unquote was making a lot of money, and so I got involved in this .com, working as an office manager, and we were moving offices. They were leaving this tiny building that they were in, and they were going to move to this much bigger, nicer place, and we had these meetings that we had to have. And there was this one guy who was in charge of the server room, because it was a computer.com company. So that's all I'm going to say. And he was in charge of the server room, and we had these meetings to talk about what we needed in the new place and what kind of electrical and what kind of, what the power panel had to look like and all that kind of stuff. And because I had come from that background, working in facilities at Kendall Corporation for 14 years, I had some knowledge. And so when he started talking about this stuff, it didn't sound right to me. And when I started speaking up, he would look at me and I would just feel the evil coming out of him. Mm-hmm. And to the point where I actually went out and bought a pair of rose-colored glasses to protect my eyes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what I was doing. I think this is the first time I've ever talked about it. But it felt very important to have that barrier between my eyes and this man. And the company, my husband and I took a very brief, 5 days. 5 days is not long enough to be in London, people, because you spend 2 days traveling and you only get 3 days there. It's not long enough and it's not worth it. Mm-hmm. But we had 5 days in London. We were celebrating our anniversary, I think. And we got home 1:30 in the morning, early Monday morning, and the gal who was watching the boys for us, she was, spending the night. She was spending the week with them, and she helped us with our luggage, and she said, "I'm not sure you have a job anymore." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, I don't think you have a job anymore. They did layoffs. I'm laid off. I don't think you have a job either." And I went, "Oh, okay. Well, if I had known that, I would have stayed an extra week in London." Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
But that was an interesting lesson to learn.
It was. Before we go, I want you to tell everybody your website information so they can go and check out, your books, all your books, this book, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. My romance writing website is christine-ashworth.com. And my metaphysical website, which I am out of practice with and I'm just getting into, and it's still like an ugly baby website, so don't hate it too much, please. I'm working on it. I have a friend working on it for me, is mysticalmagic.me. And then you can find me on Facebook. I'm really easy to find. I've got a hat on and a big smile, and I'm on Instagram. And those are pretty much my only social medias right now.
Mm-hmm. We've got 4 minutes, but as I was reading the book, what really got me at the end was a few short sentences that you wrote. That hit the nail right on the head. And can I read it?
Sure.
Okay. Just have to make sure. All right. What you wrote was about Scott. He reminded that our world, in and of itself, was a magical place just waiting to be explored. That there was real magic all around us, that everything we saw and touched, everything, even the most inanimate object, had spirit, energy, and life. He taught us that magic was not something to be worn and discarded like an old jacket. Instead, it was practical. It was easily incorporated into our everyday lives. And once done, it would become just as much second nature as flipping a light switch. Now that's brilliant. Seriously.
I wrote that? Wow.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I've had that happen too. Did I write that? No. But I think you really hit the nail on the head.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's probably a good way to depart from this. Again, when's the book going to come out? People can get it?
It's out September 4th, and you can pre-order it now.
Okay. And it's a good read. You wrote it. It's an easy read as well, and really we didn't get into all the family stuff and everything, but it's all in the book, how you guys grew up and what was going on, and, it was kind of a familiar thing just to read, it was kind of brought me back in the day kind of sort of thing. So thank you for writing such a nice book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful talking to you.
I'm glad that you were here. And, as long as we're throwing out the thanks, we have to thank the listeners as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because without them, I'd be talking to you, you'd be talking to me, and we'd just be talking to each other, and nobody would listen, and probably nobody else would care in that respect. Right. But in the meantime, everybody... Sorry?
Thank you so much, listeners.
And as always, everybody, blessed be, and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at the same time for another great guest and more fun. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2009.
You have been listening to the Para X Radio Network.